short antenna, painful impact. Welcome back to parasitology. Hi, I'm Christopher. Let me introduce the Brachycera, the short antenna flies. And that name is useful. Brachy means short, and cera points us towards the horn or antenna. So the title of this video is not just decoration. Short antenna help us recognize the group, and painful impact reminds us why these flies clinically matter. The main focus today is the family Tabanidae, the horseflies and the deer flies. These are large, strong, daytime biting flies. The adult females take blood meals. As telmophages, their mouthparts do not politely tap into a vessel like a tiny needle. They cut, they lacerate the skin to create a pool of blood from which to lap. That feeding style causes pain, stress, interrupted grazing, reduced productivity, and opportunities for pathogen transmission. Tabanids are best known as mechanical vectors. Their painful bites and interrupted feeding can allow contaminated mouthparts to move infectious material from one host to another. But be careful not to turn that into an absolute rule. Tabanids are not only mechanical vectors. With parasites such as Eliophora schneideri, they can serve as biological vectors or intermediate hosts. So remember, recognize the fly, understand how it feeds, and use that biology to predict veterinary risk. Before we zoom into Tabanidae, let's place them on the dipteran roadmap. We can also break down diptera etymology. Di means two, and ptera means wings. True flies have one functional pair of wings, while the second pair has been modified into halteres, tiny balancing organs that help flies maneuver like little flying superheroes. For teaching purposes, we can organize veterinary flies into three practical bins. First are the nematocerans, the long antenna flies, mosquitoes, black flies, biting midges, and sandflies. Second are the non-cycloraphan brachycerans, where today's tabanids live. Third are the cycloraphans, the higher flies. That group includes several important veterinary flies, including the domestic housefly, tsetse flies, keds, the New World screwworm, and more. We'll handle those in another video, so stay tuned. A taxonomy note: these are teaching bins, not perfectly equal branches. Cycloraphans are nested within Brachycera. The name cyclorapha means circular seam, referring to the circular opening used by many adult felt flies as they leave the puparium. For clinical reasoning, the roadmap still works beautifully. Taxonomy helps us organize vector biology, feeding behavior, larval habits, and clinical relevance. Horseflies and deer flies are both tabanids. Horseflies are generally larger, stronger flyers, and often have a more clear wing. Deer flies are often smaller, have patterned wings, and boast strikingly beautiful and colorful eyes. Of course, nature loves exceptions, but this pattern gets you started. Like nematocerans, only females take blood meals. Males feed mostly on nectar and plant fluids. That sex difference matters because female feeding behavior drives the bite, the pain, the stress response, and the transmission risk. If the case describes large daytime flies biting horses, cattle, deer, wildlife, or people, the family Tabanidae should jump on your list. The word chrysops, one of the classic deer fly genre, means golden eye. And that is perfect because the eyes of the deer flies can look almost jewel-like, especially before the specimen dries or fades. When you see patterned wings and dramatic eyes, let the name chrysops remind you. Golden eyes, deer fly wing pattern, family Tabanidae. Tabanids are telmophagous. Telma means pool or puddle, and phagy means eating. So telmophagy means pool feeding. The fly cuts and lacerates into the skin, creates a small pool of blood, and then laps it up. That is why the bite hurts and why the wound can continue to ooze. Fun fact, female tabanids are usually dicoptic, meaning that their eyes are separated. Males are often holoptic, meaning the eyes are close together or touching. Tabanids are primarily daytime biting flies. In veterinary medicine, they commonly serve as mechanical vectors because they spread pathogens such as equine infectious anemia virus, Anaplasma marginale, Francisella tularensis, and some mechanically transmitted trypanosomes such as Trypanosoma evonsi. Mechanical transmission is the contaminated mouthparts model. The agent does not need to develop or multiply inside the fly. The fly feeds on an infected host, moves to another host, and carries infectious material along for the ride. This is clinically important because behavior alone can make the fly matter. A quick nuance: mechanical transmission is not limited to mouthparts. If a fly carries organisms on its legs, abdomen, or external body surfaces, that is still mechanical transmission, but we typically call it for transport. Phoresis is a type of mechanical pathogen transfer. But tabanids are not mechanical vectors only. For several pathogens and parasites, tabanids can function as biologic vectors or intermediate hosts, meaning that the agent undergoes development inside the fly. Those are highlighted entries on this image. Eliophore schneideri is a high-yield veterinary example that we'll come back to when we cover nematodes. Equine infectious anemia is the classic veterinary example of mechanical transmission by tabanids. The pathogen is equine infectious anemia virus, a retrovirus in the lentivirus group. Lentivirus comes from the Latin lentus, meaning slow, which fits the chronic, persistent nature of many infections in this group. The transmission story is straightforward. A horsefly or deerfly feeds on an infected horse. The horse reacts because the bite hurts, so feeding is interrupted. The fly quickly seeks another horse and continues feeding. Contaminated blood on the mouthparts can mechanically transfer virus to the next animal. There is no biologic development of equine infectious anemia virus within the fly. The fly does not need to be a tiny incubator. It only needs to be a painful, interrupted, blood-contaminated transfer device. Also remember that iatrogenic transmission can occur through contaminated needles, blood products, or instruments. The vector matters, but biosecurity still matters too. Eliophore schneideri shows that tabanids are not just mechanical vectors. Eliophore is a filarial nematode. Phylum means thread, and filarial worms are literally thread-like nematodes. Their microfilaria are the small larval stages that can be taken up during a blood meal. In well-adapted reservoir or definitive hosts, such as mule deer and black-tailed deer, infection may be mild or subclinical. The parasite and host have reached something closer to an evolutionary truce. But in aberrant hosts, the story changes dramatically. Horses, elk, moose, sheep, and other non-adaptive hosts may develop nodules, tracts, vascular injury, neurologic signs, ocular disease, and other severe lesions depending on where the worms and inflammation causes disease. Transmission here is biologic. The tabanid ingests microfilaria. Larval development occurs inside the fly, and infected larvae are later transmitted to another host. This is very different from the EIA model. The bigger lesson is host adaptation. A parasite that is well tolerated by its reservoir host can cause far more serious disease in an aberrant host. Let's step back and make the pattern usable. First, identify the fly. Is it a large daytime biting fly that looks like a horsefly or deerfly? Second, understand how it feeds. Is it slicing the skin, causing pain, creating pooled blood, and getting interrupted? Third, predict the veterinary risk. Pain, stress, blood loss, reduced grazing, mechanical and biologic transmission all become possible. The EIA example teaches mechanical transmission. The fly's behavior is enough. The Eliophore example teaches the biologic vector potential. The parasite uses the fly as part of its life cycle. Remember, not every fly needs biologic development of the pathogen to develop. Feeding behavior alone can create veterinary risk. But when a parasite does develop in a fly, the same biting behavior can support a full biologic life cycle. Recognize the fly, understand the feeding, and then predict the problem. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Lee, and what you know today protects everyone tomorrow.